In December 2017, at the age of 40, I have made the biggest decision in my life. I have decided to leave the corporate world, a world that I've so accustomed to for more than 15 years, to leave a very stable job in one of the international banks in Jakarta, to pursue my dream to become an entrepreneur. My thinking was, if I don't do it now, I would never have the guts to do it ever. If I don't do it now, I would regret this for the rest of my life. So I discussed with my husband, who is now going to be the sole provider of our family, and I resigned. Now, one of the businesses that I've always been interested into is in the hospitality industry. And we're seeing a trend, an increased trend, in hostels around the world. So instead of staying in a hotel, more and more young people are choosing to stay in a hostel. Now, with no real background in this area, I've made another big decision in my life. I've invested all of our savings to purchase an office in Hayamuruk and turn it into a hostel. When I first started the project, I was very excited. I was very convinced with all of this. But then, my journey to become an entrepreneur was much, much harder than I expected. I began to fall into depression. And it wasn't so obvious at first. It would just start with the sleeping patterns. I would wake up and really try so hard to wake up. And even though I'm actually an early morning person. And then in the midday, I would go home and I would take a long nap. Just so afraid of facing reality. And then at night, I would wake up filled with anxiety, having panic attack, sweating. And then second thing happened is all these negative thoughts in my head. I started to remember all the bad things that people have said to me, all of my mistakes, all of my failures. And I would repeat it again and again in my head. And I would convince myself that I would never be a success. And I didn't talk to anybody about this. Actually, this is the first time I've actually opened up to people about my depression. And it's not that I don't want to talk to people about it. It's just that I don't think they would understand. I don't think that they would understand because people would say, weren't you the one who wanted to try it all? Weren't you the one who wanted to pursue this, to leave your job? Didn't you want to be your own boss? Now you have all the time in the world. So instead of explaining to them, I just put on a brave face and pretended that everything was okay. But deep inside, I knew if I continue to do this, things are just going to get worse. And during this depression period, I continued to work on the hostel. So fast forward to February this year, the hostel was finally ready. And if you are not familiar with hostel living, let me just explain to you a little bit. Has anybody here ever lived in a dormitory before? In a dorm? Yes, some have. Well, hostel living is pretty much like living in a dormitory. Now, so instead of in a hotel where you get your own room and your own bathroom, your own amenities, hostel living is sharing everything. So you share the room, you share the bathroom, you share the toilet, you share the common areas. It's just like living in a dorm. But if you're in a dorm, you actually live with friends your age or your peers. Now, in hostel living, you actually live with complete strangers. And these strangers come from all parts of the world. In the past 2 months, we have welcomed at least 30 nationalities. So people from Algeria, Turkey, Pakistan, people from Germany, Britain, the US, people from Japan or Korea. It's like traveling the world in that space. And now, as a new hostel owner, I have begun to identify our hostel guests. And they typically look like this. So they carry a huge backpack with them. Most of them come with this. And they're so heavy. And you're wondering, what do they have in that huge backpack? Well, basically, they put everything in their backpack because they travel not just like us, only 6 days, but they travel 6 weeks. Some travel 6 months or 8 months or even 1 year. So in that period of time, how do they manage, you ask? Well, they manage by traveling on budget. So everything is on budget. So with the budget they have to maximize it. They have to be able to talk to the locals. They have to be able to find the cheapest ride. They have to be able to communicate. And they have to use all of the resources that they have with this. And because of that, they become very adventurous. Most of our hostels that come to us, they don't mind eating spicy food or eat in the street stalls because that's how they manage to stay on travel for so long. That's actually their recipe. Another recipe that they have is communicate. They ask each other questions. Where do you get the best train ticket? How do you go from one point to another? That's how they manage to travel for so long. So during this period, I've learned 3 points from my hostel guests. And these 3 points help me to combat my depression. And these 3 points may not work for you, it may work for you, but I sincerely hope that they will inspire you. Now, one of the things that I've learned with hostel guests is we need to interact face-to-face every day. So every day I would meet them, I would greet them, and we will have long conversations together. Now, recent studies have shown that face-to-face social interaction is actually good for depression. The University of Oregon Health and Science have proven that people who interact on a daily basis, face-to-face, have lower depression risks. So instead of hiding away from the others, people with depression should actually meet with other people. And hostel living is just like that. Hostel living is meeting with people. It's interacting with people. You can feel the energy when you go to the common area where people actually sit together and interact and share tips. They want to go to Jogja, how to get to Jogja. They want to get the best bites in Jakarta, how to get there. How to hop on to the cheapest ride in Jakarta. That's how they interact. And from that, I learned that just by interacting with them, by having face-to-face meeting, my depression started to evaporate. And then the second point that I've learned from our hostel guests is that we need to practice gratitude. By practicing gratitude, I feel less and less depressed every day. Our hostel guests would come to us. They're not looking for fancy dinners. They're not looking for the trendiest fashion or shiny rides. They're looking for simple things. They're looking for the next place to eat. They're looking for the cheapest bus ride. And by that, I learned that in order to feel happy, I don't need the big things. I can start by practicing gratitude, by appreciating the small things. Then I want to show you a picture of one of our hostel guests. His name is Terrence White. And he's a 19-year-old guy. He plays basketball. He's a U.S. resident. He plays basketball for the Washington Jefferson College. And when he came to Jakarta, he only wanted to do one thing, which is to visit the Thousand Islands. When he came, it was pouring rain. So when he got to our hostel, he said, I wanted to try something outside of your hostel. There's a food cart that I want to try, but it was pouring rain. So on his last day, he came to me again and he said, can you take me to that food stall? We tried to find it. We couldn't find it, so we had to walk 15 minutes. And this is the food stall that he was talking about, a food stall that sells kue ape. Kue ape is basically a pancake with a little round mushy thing that has pandan flavor. And it's such a small thing. For him, it's only 10 cents. But that made him so happy. And he said, the best pancake I've ever tasted in my life. So by appreciating the small things, by appreciating the people around us, we can combat depression. And I started to see more and more examples around me. For instance, the warung in front of our hostel, Bu Mumun's Nasi Rames, where we would take our guests to go there. Or another hardworking guy, his name is Pa Jul. And he would come every day, 4 a.m., to cook for his customers. And all these hardworking people, I would miss it if I don't practice gratitude. That's what they have shown me. And the third point that I want to share with you is hostel living has taught me to become a hero in my own story. Now, every day I meet these fascinating people who have traveled around the world. They would tell me their stories. And each of them is very fascinating, is amazing. And each of them has become a hero in their own story. I'll give you an example of one of our hostel guests. His name is Ahmad Kaplan. And he is an MMA fighter from Turkey. And he came all the way to learn pencaksilat from Indonesia. His mission was to learn different martial arts across the world so that one day he can become a world champion himself. And before he came to Jakarta, he actually lived in Thailand, where he learned martial arts as well there. And there, he also taught martial arts and English to the children. And when I listened to all these stories around me, I started to ask, what is my story? Am I becoming a hero in my own story? Or am I just a sidekick, a villain, a stuntman in my own story? What depression did to me, to us, was to convince us that we would never be a hero in our own stories. What depression did to me was to convince me to hide under a rock, to shy away from all the people around me, to live under a shadow, and to never tell my story. So today I encourage you, if you're in depression, crawl out of it, fight it, and walk out of here as a hero in your own stories. In conclusion, depression can hit you. It can follow you wherever you go. And unfortunately, at this point, there is no fixed formula to cure this disease. Everybody has to find his or her own coping mechanism. For me, I have found mine. Through hostel living, I've learned that I need to have this face-to-face social interaction. Through hostel living, I'm encouraged to practice gratitude. And through hostel living, I fight depression by becoming a hero in my own story. Thank you for listening.